Good morning, Mr. Chair. We are live and recording. You can begin the meeting whenever you wish.
Thank you, Martina. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Patterson, Chair of the Committee of Adjustment. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township's YouTube channel. We'll be having a hybrid meeting today with attendees joining from the council chambers and remotely. We will follow all of our regular policies and procedures. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak on the matter, and I will call on you. For those in council chambers, you must speak into the microphone to be heard in person and online. Please use the speak button to stop and start your microphone. When I call for the vote, I will call for all those in favor, followed by all those opposed, and you will physically raise your hand to vote in the manner you wish to vote. Now I'd like to call the roll. Please raise your hand and state your presence when I call your name. Committee member Mark Porter.
Present.
Committee member Rob Lamar.
Present.
Committee member Rod Manley.
Present.
Not attending today is committee member Deputy Mayor Nelson, and the staff, Secretary, Treasurer, Clerk Martina,
Good morning.
Planner Emily, and legislative assistants Patty O'Grady. With all of the committee, other than Mr. Nelson, in attendance, I'll call the meeting to order. And the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the lands which are part of the 1818 Treaty 20 and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe bands of the Great Ojibwe Nation. We offer our gratitude to the Ojibwe for their care and knowledge of the lands on which we work, live, and enjoy. May we honor and respect their teaching and our treaty obligations as we grow forward. Next is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any committee member have any interest in the items that we're going to be discussing today? Hearing none, move on to the approval of the minutes. Many months ago, we had our last meeting, August 1st, 2025. The minutes have been circulated. I need a mover and a seconder to receive and approve the minutes.
So move the minutes, Rod Manley.
And seconded by Mark Porter. Thank you, Rob and Mark. All those in favor? Yes. Minor variance applications, number A0325, the minor variance, and we will ask Emily to review the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of committee. I'm pleased to be before you for the first time during my employment with the Township of Douro-Dummer to present to you minor variance application A0325. The application has been submitted by Robert and Jeanette Porteous, the owners of the subject property, which is located in part of Lot 28, Concession 6 in the Dummer Ward, municipally known as 2121 White Lake Road West. The subject property is primarily zoned shoreline residential in the township's zoning bylaw. A portion of the property along the shoreline is zoned Environmental Conservation 1 to recognize hazardous lands associated with the floodplain of White Lake. At present, the property is developed in the form of a single detached permanent dwelling, together with related accessory structures. A private individual septic system and well do service the existing development. To provide a brief overview of the proposal, the owners are seeking to demolish the existing 24 square meter sunroom, which forms part of the existing dwelling, and replace it with a new 2-story addition comprised of a 24 square meter sunroom on the main floor level and enclose it below to provide additional habitable space within the basement, resulting in a gross floor area of 48 square meters for the proposed addition. The proposed addition will be located within the footprint of the existing sunroom portion of the dwelling and will maintain the existing deficient water yard setbacks. The existing dwelling is considered non-complying due to deficiencies from the applicable regulations of the SR zone. More specifically, the existing dwelling is located having water yard and northern interior side yard setbacks of 9.1 meters and 0.83 meters respectively, whereas the SR zone requires water yard and interior side yard setbacks of 30 meters and 6 meters respectively. The existing dwelling also has a lot coverage of 27.3%, whereas the SR zone limits maximum lot coverage to 15%. Given the substantial demolition, alteration, and enlargement to the existing dwelling taking place through this application, it will no longer benefit from the permissions afforded to non-complying buildings and structures. The minor variance therefore seeks to recognize the existing deficiencies to facilitate the construction of the proposed addition. Prior to filing the minor variance application, the owners did engage in pre-consultation with township staff and relevant external agencies, which identified the information and technical studies to be submitted. At that time, given the encroachment of the White Lake floodplain on the subject property, Otonabee Region Conservation Authority requested that the floodplain elevation contour be shown on the site plan to confirm that the proposed development would be located outside of this hazard. The extent of the floodplain was surveyed by an Ontario land surveyor and then subsequently plotted on the site plan submitted in support of the application. And they do show that all development will occur outside of the White Lake floodplain. An environmental impact study was also requested, given the proximity of the proposed development to the water body and a provincially significant wetland. The scoped EIS did primarily focus on sensitive hydrologic features, fish and fish habitat, and also included a preliminary screening for species at risk. The scoped EIS was sent for peer review while the application was in process. The peer reviewer found the scope of the EIS to be acceptable and confirmed that the EIS demonstrates conformity with the provincial planning statement. The background review, field studies, and assessment of potential impacts were generally found to be acceptable. However, the peer reviewer did express some concerns with the omission of a discussion on avian and bat species at risk from the body of the EIS. The recommended mitigation measures outlined in the EIS were also generally found to be appropriate and did substantially address the peer reviewer's concerns regarding avian species at risk. While the EIS recommends that no vegetation removal occur between April 1st and August 31st in order to protect avian species at risk, the peer reviewer recommended that this window be extended to between April 1st and November 30th to mitigate potential impacts to bat species at risk. Provided the mitigation measures are adhered to, the peer reviewer was of the opinion, like the environmental consultant, that the project should be permitted to proceed. The owners also obtained an engineering report to demonstrate that the replacement of the existing sunroom located within the required water yard is necessary. In brief, the engineer's report provided that over time, the foundation of the sunroom has shifted and settled, and as a result, the sunroom is pulling away from the rest of the dwelling. The report recommended reconstruction of the sunroom on a foundation which meets or exceeds the minimum requirements of the Ontario Building Code of the day. The owners at the time of pre-consultation were also advised to consult with First Nations on the proposed development before filing a formal Planning Act application. Curve Lake First Nation provided a letter stating their interest in the project given the high archaeological potential of the area, but ultimately did not request an archaeological assessment due to existing development on the property, and that the addition will be located on sloping terrain. Curve Lake requested to be contacted immediately if during construction any artifacts or remains are unearthed, or if new unanticipated impacts to their rights or the environment do arise. The owners also obtained a planning brief in support of the application. The planning brief concluded that the application is consistent with the PPS and meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. The primary basis of the rationale provided in the planning brief is that the minor variance is seeking to address existing zoning deficiencies, which will not be further exacerbated as a result of the proposed development, and further, that utilizing the existing building footprint and ensuring no further encroachment towards the water body will mitigate visual and environmental impacts. So as the committee is aware, minor variance applications are required to demonstrate that the 4 tests of a minor variance under Section 45 of the Planning Act have been met. The first test, does the minor variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The subject property is designated Lakeshore Residential and Environmental Constraint in the OP. The environmental constraint designation does correspond to the floodplain of White Lake, and the site plans do show that all existing and proposed development is located outside of the floodplain and therefore within the Lakeshore Residential designation, which permits single detached dwellings and cottages. Policies of the Lakeshore Residential designation generally require a water setback of 30 meters for new buildings and structures. However, the OP allows for the replacement of existing buildings located within the 30-meter water setback on the same footprint if necessary due to structural defects, provided that no further encroachment towards the water body results. The OP further permits lower tier municipalities to grant minor variances from this standard on existing lots of record, the defining date for which is October 22nd, 2008, or in the case of a minor addition to an existing building. And in this case, both criteria are met. The minor variance therefore maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The second test, does the minor variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The subject property is zoned shoreline residential and environmental conservation 1 in the township's zoning bylaw. And similar to the official plan designation, the environmental conservation 1 zone corresponds to the floodplain of White Lake. And as previously noted, all development is located outside of this hazard and therefore within the portion of the property zoned shoreline residential. And this zone does permit permanent and recreational single detached dwellings. As previously noted, the existing dwelling is non-compliant. However, due to the substantial demolition, alteration, and enlargement proposed through the application, it will no longer enjoy non-complying status. For this reason, the existing zoning deficiencies must be recognized to allow the project to proceed. The provisions applicable to non-complying buildings and structures do contemplate minor modifications to said buildings as appropriate, provided that existing zoning deficiencies are not exacerbated and new zoning deficiencies are not created. The minor variance is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The third test, is the proposed use desirable and appropriate for the development of the subject property? The proposed development will be in keeping with the nature and scale of development in the surrounding area, which are likewise developed with permanent and recreational dwellings. Given that the proposed development is to occur within the existing building footprint, massing and visual impacts from the shoreline and neighboring properties are not anticipated. Similarly, maintaining the existing deficient water setback will minimize impacts to the shoreline ecosystem, water body, and wetland. And staff expect that further mitigation of potential environmental impacts can be achieved through a mitigation measures agreement between the owners and the municipality, which would ensure that the recommendations of the EIS are followed. The proposed use is desirable and appropriate for the development of the subject property. The fourth and final test is the variance minor in nature. As previously noted, the proposed development is to occur within the established building footprint and will not be located any closer to the water than what currently exists. The purpose of the minor variance is to address existing zoning deficiencies to facilitate the construction of the proposed addition. The extent of the existing zoning deficiencies will not be increased, and the development proposal otherwise complies with the zoning bylaw. as mentioned throughout this presentation, impacts to the shoreline and natural environment, neighborhood character, as well as visual impacts, if any, are anticipated to be minimal. The variance is therefore considered minor in nature. Municipal decisions on planning matters are also required to be consistent with the provincial planning statement. The subject property is considered rural lands under the policies of the PPS. Residential development is permitted on rural lands, provided the site is suitable for the adequate provision of sewage and water services. Development that can be sustained by rural service levels shall be promoted, and development shall be appropriate to the available or planned infrastructure. The proposed development represents a minor expansion of a permitted use, and given that the use will remain the same, no additional demands on municipal services or infrastructure are anticipated. Again, no further encroachment towards the high water mark will result. So it is anticipated that there will be no adverse impacts to the natural environment. The scoped EIS demonstrates this to be the likely outcome, provided that the recommended mitigation measures are adhered to. Otonabee Region Conservation Authority also confirmed that the application has demonstrated that the proposed development is located outside of hazardous lands associated with the White Lake floodplain. The application therefore appears to be consistent with the provincial planning statement. So we did receive some agency comments prior to the writing of this report. First from Peterborough County Engineering and Construction Division, Trent Severn Waterway, and Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board all confirmed that they have no objections or comments to offer on the application. We did also hear from Alderville First Nation, who had initially requested the completion of an archaeological assessment in support of the minor variance application. However, the applicants did contact Dr. Julie Kapirka, who is the consultation manager for Alderville First Nation, to provide some additional information regarding the nature of the development proposal, as well as to share the outcome of the consultation with Kerb Lake and Hiawatha First Nations, which was undertaken prior to filing the minor variance application with the township. The owners also noted for Julie that there had been previous construction and site alteration, which could affect the archaeological potential of the property. The applicants also asked that Alderville First Nation reconsider their request for an archaeological assessment, and we received further correspondence from Alderville stating that it would withdraw its request for the completion of an archaeological assessment in this case. Otonabee Region Conservation Authority noted that the proposed development is located outside of the flooding hazard of White Lake. Therefore, the application is consistent with Chapter 5 of the PPS concerning natural hazards. The proposed development will not create new or exacerbate any existing hazards. Orca did note that the subject property is located partially within their regulated area, so permits from Orca will be required before any site alteration or construction activities can take place. The subject property is not located within a vulnerable area subject to source protection plan policies. Therefore, a restricted land use notice was not required. When the report was drafted, no public comments have been received. However, we did the other day receive some comments from Michael Ord, and I will just read them for the committee as they were presented to staff. Good morning. As the majority owner of 2125 next door, I have consulted with the other 4 owners of our property. We have no objections to the proposed construction at 2121. Mr. and Mrs. Porteous have mentioned their concerns to me about the safety of their front porch. They have taken steps to support it, but as far as I know, they are cautious about using that porch. We support their application to remove the porch and rebuild as mentioned in your notice. Yours truly, Michael Ord. The application was also circulated to senior staff. And as of the writing of this report, and also as of today, there have been no comments received from senior staff members. So with all of that being said, staff have prepared the following recommendation for the committee to consider. And the recommendation is that the committee review and consider all verbal and written comments received regarding minor variance file A0325, and that committee approve minor variance application 0325 to permit a minimum water yard setback of 9.1 meters, a minimum northern interior side yard setback of 0.83 meters, and a maximum lot coverage of 27.3% for the life of the structure to facilitate the issuance of a building permit for the construction of a new two-story addition with a gross floor area of 48 square meters as shown on the site plan, which has been attached to the decision as Schedule A, and to bring the proposed construction into compliance with the zoning bylaw. There are a number of conditions of approval recommended. Firstly, that any necessary permits from ORCA, Douro-Dummer Building and Planning Department, and any other required ministry or agency be obtained. That verification from an Ontario land surveyor be provided to the township's chief building official after the structure is framed to confirm that all applicable setback requirements have been met and to ensure compliance with any relief granted by the decision of this committee. That a mitigation measures agreement be entered into between the owner and the municipality, which would ensure the recommendations outlined in section 12 of the EIS, prepared by Oak Ridge Environmental, dated October 2025, and the additional recommendations outlined in section 4 of the peer review letter, prepared by Stantec Consulting, dated January 23rd, 2026, are implemented prior to the issuance of demolition and building permits, and prior to the building permit final inspection being given. And finally, that if any archaeological resources should be discovered during the course of development, all excavation must stop immediately and an archaeologist must be contacted. So I will now defer to the committee to discuss the application, invite any further public comments, and decide whether the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. I'm available for any questions if there are any. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Emily. Welcome to the committee. Do we have any further comments from online or in attendance from the applicant or the agent?
The applicants are in the room. I'm just going to ask them if they wish to speak. One moment. The applicants have declined to speak, but they have listened to the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Online, do we have any public comments from anyone on YouTube?
No, we don't have anyone.
Okay. Then we're all alone in this decision. Committee members, Rod, Robert, and Mark, any comment? Rod?
First, thanks, Emily. That was well done and again, very thorough. Again, I see this obviously, and it fits with this section being questionable structurally and falling down literally and replacing it with something that is meeting code. So I'll be supporting this this recommendation.
Thank you, Rod. Robert?
Yes, thank you. It was nice to meet you as well, Emily. Yeah, I think the process was very thorough. A summary again was quite thorough. Nothing about the submission strikes me as being inappropriate. I too see no issue with moving forward with the recommendation as Emily's put it forward.
Thank you, Robert. Mark?
I think that Rob and
Rod both sort of expressed their thoughts on it pretty eloquently, and I agree. I mean, we're replacing a deficient structure with a superior structure in the same footprint, and all of the other tests have been met. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Well, that being the case, will someone on the committee move approval? Yes, Robert?
I'm happy to move the motion. Chair.
Yep. And I think Rod is seconding it. No further comment. All those in favor? That's unanimous. So the township staff, the next steps in the appeal period.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Now that the application has been approved, this begins a 20-day appeal period. Assuming that no appeals are received or any appeals received are withdrawn by the closing of the 20-day appeal period, the applicants can now proceed to obtain a building permit, and I will also be working with them for the mitigation measures agreement and fulfillment of the conditions outlined in the recommendation here.
Thank you. With no other business coming forward, I think our next meeting dates, we have a meeting on March 12th and again on March 26th, I believe. And look forward to seeing you then. So I'd like to have someone call a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mark?
I'll make that
And all
motion.
those in favor? We're out. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.